Hello, everybody. Lindsay Castleman here, and happy New Year. If you don't know me, I am the Counseling Center Director at the Counseling Center at Fellowship, and really love this team. And I'm very excited because over the next few months, we are going to release several different videos featuring different counselors, including myself, just giving you guys more insight into why counseling is important, but also just different topics like parenting and even just how to live wholeheartedly. How do we engage all of those different quadrants of our heart as well? The series that we're going to kick off right now is really, we kind of call it a why therapy series. We want people just to have a better understanding of therapy. We know there can be a stigma around it. And we know that there can be some misnomers around it. And we also know that there aren't great counselors out there too. And maybe the better word is that there can be counselors that might not have been a great fit. And so it's okay to keep trying and finding different counselors until you find a great fit. But the thing about it is that we want to ask ourselves why. Like, why do we want to move into counseling? Now, here's what I have seen and here's what I know just in sitting with people day in and day out. I sit not only with adults, but with couples as well. And what I start to notice and see is that so many of us go through life and don't actually know what's happening inside of us. And a lot of times we call that our internal world. And it's so wild that we don't know what's happening in our internal world because God created everything happening inside of us. He created us to reflect His image. And the more that we neglect sitting with what's happening inside of us, listening to it, understanding the way it's designed and how it reflects the Father, like the more that we start to show up in sideways ways. And we do that a lot because we don't focus on the inside. We can move so quickly to start to focus on how everything outside of us is happening. The demands of a job, the family that's overprogrammed, maybe even fear of not looking presentable, not looking like our family doesn't look the way we think it should look. We can even have backwards beliefs on how to earn God's love, not knowing how to handle disappointment or pain or embarrassment. So then we move to fault finding outside of us, to blame outside of us. And when we focus so much on the outside, then what's happening inside starts to suffer. We're not meant to neglect what's happening in here. Even if you look at Psalm 139, God says, hey, I want to be with you to search and know your heart. And that's what David invited God into. He said, hey, search me and test and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. So it's saying, God, we need to slow down, have you in here with us, be able to invite you in here so that we can see what's going on and start the process of transformation to be more in His image. But the more we neglect that, then the more that we find ourselves moving to wayward things. And it makes sense because if we've not had caregivers that were able to sit with us in our internal world, those emotions, desires, fears, thoughts, stories. If we didn't have that, we didn't have an emotionally safe person to sit with us in there, then any pain that we felt on the inside, we had to navigate that alone. And we're not built to do that. So then we're going to disconnect from anything inside of us and just focus outward. And some of this pain doesn't even have to be from childhood. It could have been even from in the womb. It could have been, sins of the father. Like there are things and emotions and places that our body's carrying that it doesn't need to be carrying these things anymore. Because when we do disconnect from what's happening inside of us, when we're carrying this pain, when we're carrying these beliefs inside of us that aren't good, we disconnect from them. And then what that starts to look like is we're living in autopilot, reactivity, we're placating, we're just running after goals that are empty. This starts to even bleed into all that we do. We can start to look at our spouse and notice that they seem distant, or an adversary or a roommate. We start to notice that our connection with our kiddos are not awesome. They're really frustrating. We can notice that our relationship with God is distant, and we can start to blame him because he's not taking away the pain and suffering. We can start to talk about ourselves in ways that are really critical, ways that are really harsh. And we can start to look around and go, man, we don't really have many close relationships. Maybe we've pushed so many people away. We can lean into things that just bring like temporary relief. Maybe it's real quick connection, but it just happens for a moment. This can go with porn, alcohol, flirtations with people who are not our spouse, or inappropriate flirtations, inappropriate relationships, just seeking status at work, seeking status at church, turning to things that can numb us, like electronics, TV, phones, video games, all of these things. I'm not saying that they're bad, but sometimes what we can do with them, and if it's numbing us so that we're not feeling on the inside, that is bad. And again, these things can fade, and then we start to need more to achieve that same temporary feeling of connection, but it never satisfies. But what if we decide to allow God to do what David invited him to do? What if we were able to not only sit in our internal world with ourselves, but with someone else, to sit in these places, to help make sense of them? We call it co-discovery, to become better connected and better friends with our internal world. But why wouldn't we? Because if we live in a healthy state that reflects the image of God by doing this, that's what we want to do. We don't want to carry around these past pains by ourselves, especially when we're offered something so much better. We're offered a chance to be more fully loved and more fully known by ourselves, by God, and by others. And we need each other. We need others to help us be more fully alive. And even our neurobiology supports this. Research in what our brain is looking for supports that we're not supposed to do these things alone. We're wired for connection, and yet so many of us walk around disconnected internally with ourselves, with God, and with others. We don't have to. And that's why we need therapy. That's why you need therapy, because you're not supposed to do this alone. Your internal world is not supposed to be neglected. And we look at Proverbs 20, verse 5. The purpose of a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. We're supposed to do these things in relationship and coordination with each other. We're not supposed to do this in a vacuum. And that's what counseling does, is that we start to slow down what's happening in your internal world, and we start to bring it into a process of transformation and connection. And that's what we want for you. That's what we want for your family, and that's what we want for your relationship with God. So hopefully this can help bring a better understanding as to why therapy and sitting with these trusted others are so, so important. We can't do this alone. So if you want more information about the Counseling Center, please feel free to go to counselingatfellowship.com. We have amazing, amazing counselors who care about you and want to help draw out that deeper understanding of your heart. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.